We only have one announcement today, and it's been our one announcement for a while. Pastor Danny is still in Africa, and he is finishing up in Kianjojo today. I think he's done by now. It's 2, so I think they finished like around now, or maybe it's going a little over. And then he will be traveling to Sodo, Ethiopia. And here he won't be doing any of the larger healing conferences. He'll just be doing the pastoral conferences. So he is officially done with the mega conferences where he had to scream and stuff. So this is good for his voice. But if you can pray for his travels to Ethiopia and for the last leg of his journey. This is the final week. And the week after, he will be traveling back here. So this is, if you have not been praying, this is your last week to pray for Pastor Danny and for all the other pastors from Korea who are there. And if you have been praying, good job. But continue to do so for him. And so let us just continue on to the passage for today. It's John chapter 20, 24 to 29. And I will read a verse, and you can read a verse, and we will read the last verse together. Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. Eight days later, his disciples were inside again, and Thomas was with them. And although the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen, yet have believed." Amen. Today's sermon is titled, "Don't Trust Your Eyes." And if I had room, I would have written, "Don't trust your eyes or what you feel or what you know." So don't trust anything about yourself. Trust is a word that is tossed around in various ways these days. We say we trust each other to keep secrets, yet the word gossip exists for a reason because people break this trust and they tell other people. The dictionary definition of the verb trust is to believe in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of something. I like the Urban Dictionary version of the word better. One says that trust is hardest thing to gain, but the easiest thing to lose. And that really speaks to me. If trust is this easily broken, what are ways then that we can ensure that they can trust in us, or that we can ensure that we can trust in the other person? Is there any way we can fully trust someone? We usually build trust off of 3 major things. There might be more, but this is what I personally rely on when considering if someone is trustworthy or not. First, I look at sources or prior evidence of trustworthiness. Whether I learn from friends of that person or from enemies of that person about what their character is like, or I personally experienced in the past what they are like, these actions and events help form an opinion of someone. Second, we look at the words and the actions that they are currently doing if we have no prior knowledge of what they are like to judge them. For example, if I ask someone for help and they don't help me, that's automatically going to, be ingrained in my brain and register in my brain in a way so that the next time I need help, I am not going to rely or trust on that person because they've already once denied me, right? So that's the second way that we build this trust, or we judge people for trust. Last, the third, but it technically is the first, is that our first impressions of someone, the moment we see them, is very important in our formation of trust, or whether that person is trustworthy in our eyes. There are some Princeton psychologists who did tests that showed it takes a 10th of a second to form a first impression. A 10th of a second. Before you can even breathe an entire breath, you have already formed an opinion about someone that you've met for the first time. And they say that the longer exposure that you have to a person does not greatly change that first impression. So this already shows me kind of how faulty our thoughts already are. It's kind of a foreshadowing. But while all three of these are standard ways of gauging the characteristics of a person, and not only for their trust, I'm telling you today to throw it all out the window. Every method you have set up in your life, due to past traumas, experiences, or things you have learned, I want you to let go of today. Because today, God is saying to not trust in your own eyes, your own feelings, your own thoughts, but to trust in His. So let's look at the main passage for today. Thomas is one of the 12 disciples. Sometimes we forget, that there are other disciples because we focus so much on the big names like Peter or John or Judas. But Thomas, although he's not mentioned much, is one of the 12, one of the main 12 that later do all the works in Christ's name. And this Thomas misses the first time that Jesus reappears to his disciples after his resurrection. I cannot imagine what Thomas is going through because he missed Jesus coming back to life, right? That first time. And so his friends and his brothers, they all tell him, hey, Jesus came to visit us. And he is just not having it, right? He proclaims that unless he sees with his two own eyes the marks on Jesus' hand where he was pierced and feels the piercings on both hands and on his side, he will not believe. I think this is very strategic and smart of Thomas, because what's the point of raising your hope to have it crushed again later, right? If it wasn't really Jesus. So Thomas decides to stay on the safe side, and he won't believe till he sees it himself. What others say won't even sway him. It falls under the same method I previously mentioned, and is a pretty solid way to build trust, and it's how people do it right now. But unfortunately, it isn't foolproof. I personally pride myself in having a great intuition, and I believe I'm pretty good, and I have that ability of being able to tell what a person is like, even from one conversation. I think it's a gift that God has given me. Yet there have been countless times when my personal intuition has been wrong, and I have misjudged someone. Even when we judge and take time to decide, like meticulously, whether to trust someone or not, we at times fail to judge correctly and are hurt by giving our trust too easily, or miss out on amazing relationships by being too stingy with our trust. And it's why I'm telling you to throw all of it out the window and start anew with a new system of building trust. Not Thomas's way of being overly wary, but Jesus's way. So first, what do we need to do? We must see the unreliability of our own eyes. So repeat after me, and you can say it to the people next to you. Don't trust your own eyes. There seems to be a bit of judgment going on with saying it to each other. But yes, don't trust your own eyes. Eyewitness reports are an incredibly important aspect of catching criminals in the act of their crime. We have witnesses take the stand and explain what they saw to send the perpetrator to jail. However, in recent years, we have come to realize how unreliable they are and how easily manipulated eyewitnesses can be. In fact, tests performed on people with good eyesight have shown that just 10 feet away, a witness may not be able to see a person's eyelashes. At 200 feet, the eyes themselves are a blur. At 500 feet, it's likely that no facial features can be distinguished. This seems logical, but murder cases have been decided in part based on the testimony of eyewitnesses who were more than 450 feet away from the perpetrator. There's this project called the Innocence Project, and it's where, these lawyers and people with good heart are going back to these cases where they decided to convict murderers or to convict people of murder, and they're going back and overturning questionable murder convictions. And they went through maybe 130 convictions that they overturned, and what they found was that 78% of these convictions that they were able to overturn were due to wrongful convictions because of faulty witness testimony. 78%. For that witness, it's a oops, sorry, I saw wrong. But for the convicted person, that was however many years that they were in jail, wrongfully accused, that they will never get back because of one faulty testimony. I will never forget my mission trip that I went to in Mexico when I was in 10th grade for several reasons. But one reason is because of one of the small group leaders who went with us. And this leader in our community was very, foregoing. She was a front runner. She was always doing things first. And she would, kind of boss other people around too, to tell them to do things. And she was such a necessity in our community. And a lot of people looked up to her and liked her. But for some reason, when we were at the trip, she didn't show any of those qualities, any of those characteristics that she had before. And in fact, she was rather quiet for most of the trip. And it was a little hands-off compared to the other women leaders that were with us. And a noticeable trait that people were quick to pick up on was that she hardly helped out in any of our chores, in any of the heavy lifting, or with any of the physical activities in general. And it was pretty shocking. She was pretty skinny and frail, so at first I gave her the benefit of the doubt. But, even my friend who was 5 foot at the time and could barely lift anything heavy would do so. And then someone else would come and be like, oh no, let me do it for you. But she would still try. But this teacher was not doing any of that. Rumors spread throughout the 2 weeks that we were there that this teacher even slept during the day in the rooms when we were holding VBS and other activities in the villages. Yet every morning she woke up and she smiled at us and asked us how we were doing and would talk with everyone as if she was doing no wrong. And that smile to me looked so fake because I knew what was going on, right? I knew what was happening behind that smile. And I remember that smile till today because I learned for the first time that it takes but a second to lose all respect for a person when you see their faults. The gossip got so bad at one point that the other teachers were careless and even bad-mouthed her in front of us students, and we were influenced to do the same. And it wasn't until one of the last few days that we were there that our pastor got wind of the situation and finally told us the truth. You see, that teacher who we had deemed was 100% lazy and was privileged and not here for the right reasons actually got in a major car crash right before coming on the trip. Our pastor told her not to come and to rest because it would be insane for her to come. But she insisted that she couldn't let her team down. And even if she couldn't do any work, she would love to be there for moral support for the team. She had heard all the rumors, all the things that we were saying about her. Yes, she smiled every morning to welcome us and give us a pep talk for that day. You might think her foolish for not having informed us, when she heard the rumors, for not saying, hey, actually, I was in a car crash. But she didn't want anyone to worry about her and could not imagine that her team would turn on her like that. I know what I saw. I saw her not working, and that was a fact. Yet the situation was completely different from what I had concluded it to be in reality. We rely on our eyes, what we see, what we hear, what we feel, to also understand God and to decide whether to live this life of Christianity or not. And we look to our sight to understand things, how the world works, and we wholeheartedly believe whatever we see. But such misunderstandings leading to bigger consequences is not a rare situation for us. We trust our eyes so easily and judge so quickly when our eyes see wrong the majority of the time. Beloved, we need to stop trusting our eyes. And even the Bible shows us how trusting in our eyes are pointless at times. Take Luke 16 and the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Lazarus is a beggar, and the rich man, has a feast, and Lazarus is trying to get even the crumbs of the feast, but the owner will deny that for him and, puts his dogs on him. And then Lazarus dies and goes to heaven, and the rich man dies later too, and he is put in hell. And he begs people in heaven, and he says, but if someone from the dead goes to them, my relatives, right? They will repent. I'm already in hell. I've realized what I've done. It's too late for me. Lord, will you send someone to my relatives can you send Lazarus to my relatives so that they will see him and believe? You know what the response is? It says, if they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. Beloved, it's saying our eyes do not give us much. Our eyes fool us. Even if someone rises from the dead, if our heart is not in the right place, we will look at that and go, oh, that's a ghost. Or we will look at that and go, oh, that's from Satan. And we will not believe in the way that the rich man thinks that we will believe. Instead, we need to trust in God's eyes. In Exodus 17, there's a war that the Israelites have with the Amalekites, which are one of the many enemies that the Israelites have. And in this war, God says to Joshua, and Joshua was the general at the time, to go out into the war, and I will lead you to victory. And they are going out into the war, and they believe in God at first. They go out and they fight, but what do they find happening? They start to lose. And so they start freaking out. They start thinking, is God really on our side? And it is only when Moses lifts his staff and continues lifting his staff that the Israelites win. When Moses starts to lower his staff, what starts to happen? The Israelites start to lose again. And so he keeps lifting his staff again. And it's why I'm telling you this is it's God's eyes. On the battlefield, when you are in the battlefield, you cannot see what is happening. But when you are Moses, when you're lifting your staff, you can 100% see what is going on. When he lowers his staff, what's happening? Like it's an immediate reaction that the people of Israel start losing. When he lifts his staff, he sees the Israelites win again and go into victory. Sometimes we don't have the benefit of being able to be like Moses and seeing it happening right in front of our eyes. But this is where the trust comes in, that we trust in God's eyes and not around what we see ourselves. This can apply not only to, other things, but it can apply to personal relationships, things that we are going through right now. We think we see one thing, but it's something completely different that's happening. And that is why we need God's eyes. Second, don't trust your feelings. As a charismatic church that feels the Holy Spirit, and we believe in the gifts and the existence and the power of the Holy Spirit, this seems to be such a weird thing to say, to not trust feelings, because our feelings are so important in our understanding and our feeling the love of God. And I personally would not be here without having felt God's love for me. But that's not what I'm talking about when I say don't trust your feelings. I'm talking about your wishy-washy feelings that come and go, that are fleeting. The bouts of anger or annoyance that rise up, your quick moments of joy, and then even quicker disappointments and despair. But these emotions that you feel on a daily basis due to fighting with a friend, getting a low grade, or getting a high grade in a class, feeling happy from eating good food, and then feeling hangry because you haven't eaten, all of these emotions are so in the moment. They are not continual. And when you wake up the next day, you start again with fresh emotions for that day. Beloved, I'm urging you now to not trust these everyday fleeting emotions. I feel like every week when I stand up here and I'm talking to you, I share with you my weaknesses and my faults. And I hope you know that these examples I share with you are very much in the past tense and don't define me right now. But anyway, I'm here to share another weakness with you. I was very honest to my emotions growing up as a kid. But a really, really, really bad habit that I had when I was young was that when I got angry, and I would shut everyone out, and I would deny myself pleasures or the things I was supposed to do that day out of my anger. So for example, if my mom would anger me or say something to make me angry, but that day I was also supposed to go to the amusement park, what I would do was I would tell her, I'm not gonna go. I'm not going to go. I'm so mad, and you've hurt me so much that I'm not going to go. But looking back at this is the stupidest punishment that I can give my mom, because it's not hurting my mom, it's hurting me, right? I'm not going to be the one who's able to go enjoy the rides. But in hindsight, it affected me negatively, but I didn't know at that time. I thought it was like the thing I had to do. And like because of my emotions, because I was angry at that time, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to do it. But my mom, my sweet mom, would always console me. And she would say whatever she thought I needed to hear to get me to go. She would say I'm sorry. She would, bribe me. She would do whatever it would take to get me to go because she knew I wanted to go. And so I would relent. I'd be like, fine. And I would go. Pastor Danny hated this about me. Hated with a passion. He did not understand why I would do this. And so one day he convinced my mom to not persuade me. And so one day when I got angry over something small, I don't even remember what it was, I said I wouldn't go shopping. I'm not going to go to the mall. And my dad, my mom, Pastor Danny, and Becky all left me home alone, and they went. You see, what I realized that day was that my anger and my strong belief that I did not want to go shopping dissipated the moment I heard the car start and they left. It disappeared like that. I was so sure I didn't want to go and that was the right choice for me. But when I saw them leave, I realized that deep down, I did want to go. Deep down, that was what I wanted. The next emotion that came up inside of me was instant regret. And you can bet I did not do that again. No matter how angry I get, I will never go pass an opportunity to go do things because I know that that's what I wanted to do. Beloved, this story is funny, but I hope you see the truth behind it, that our emotions, we can't even control our emotions. And if we follow our emotions, we will make decisions that we will definitely regret. And I hope for all of you that you don't turn away from God because of your fleeting emotion that will not last. It's why we need to then trust in God's emotions. Psalm 43 says this, "And he put a new song in my mouth, a song of praise to our God. Many will see and fear and will trust in the Lord." Praise, I feel like our worship has been really on point, this week and last week as well. Or maybe, I don't know if the worship leaders are in one spirit with me or that I'm creating my sermons around the praise. I don't know which one it is, but it's kind of shocking. But the song that we sang today, Even When It Hurts, right? I think it's by Hillsong, Even When It Hurts, and along with all the other songs as well today, man, that is exactly what trusting in God's emotions means. Because as it says in Psalm 40, he puts a new song in my mouth, not me. And it's to lead to that trusting in the Lord, right? It doesn't just say he puts a song in my mouth and I praise God, but it ends with saying, and we will trust in the Lord. It's going hand in hand. I can't tell you of how many times I've had to force myself to come to church or force myself to spend time with God because I wasn't feeling it that day. But it's that when I do come before him, that hatred or whatever anger or whatever disappointment I was feeling in that moment, it dissipates. And God puts a new song in my mouth. And I have never, ever left a session with God without a new joy, without a new song, without a new peace in my heart. I've never left with that anger still residing inside of me, even when I went into that moment of prayer out of force, out of reluctance. I've never left spending time with God without this joy, because if my mom can console me, if my mom knows what's really inside my heart, what really I want, why would our God, our Father in heaven, not know what I truly want in my heart? And why would he not console me? Why would he not persuade my emotions to change, right? Because he loves us even more. And how much more would he change our despairing feelings into joyful ones? But we have to let him. We have to go. And we have to trust that he will. Psalm 56:3 says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." It's a famous verse. Fear is an emotion, right? And a lot of times we don't trust because we fear our trust being broken in the future. We fear what could happen, not what is happening, but what could. And I think that's scarier than the present. What if? We've been hurt too many times, and that's why we fear it. Yet David knew what he was talking about when he says this, when he says, when he's afraid, he puts his trust in God. To trust God is very different from trusting someone else. Because when we trust God, we don't ask for him to earn our trust like we do for everyone else, but rather we have to first take a leap of faith. And it's that we should trust God even without knowing the results. But God is a good God, and like a cheat sheet, God already shows us what the results will be. He promises that the results will be good. Throughout so many verses in Psalms and in the Bible, he shows us that his promises will be good. We just have to believe what he's telling us is true. But that truth, it takes that bit of faith. Right? The reason we say faith instead of trust, that we don't just say we trust God, we say we have faith in God, is that it takes that leap. We don't know what it's going to be. We don't know what's there. We don't know what's in our future, but we're saying, okay, we'll take that step because you say so, because you show us that it'll be so. Last, what we do not need to trust. Do not trust your own knowledge. Proverbs 3:5 says this, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding." Knowledge to us is not only facts, but also what we have put into our experience. It's what we've experienced and learned. This is similar to what I'm saying when I talk about your eyes, what you see, and that what we learn from our eyes, what we see, turns into knowledge that we then rely on. That in and of itself is not bad. God made us this way, right? We see, we input it, and we learn and we keep it, right? That's how God has built us to be. And we can use that in our relationship with him in positive ways. But when this becomes a bad thing is when we start relying solely on our knowledge. Why this is dangerous is that when we rely only on our own knowledge, we do not look for the knowledge we don't have and just dwell in what we already know. When I was at church yesterday working on this sermon, I saw praise team come starting at 6, 7-ish, and then staying till past 10 p.m. at night to practice for praise today. I don't know if that's normal, what you guys usually do, or if it was just yesterday you guys did that. But, you see, the rest of us see them up here. We see them praising, and we think, one of two things. We think it's glamorous, and we want to be a part of it, right? Or we see all the little mistakes that they make and we judge them. Okay, one of the two. But in reality, I'm showing you guys that there is painstaking work involved in praise team as well. It looks easy. All you have to do is stand up there and praise, right? But there is hours and hours of work that is there that we do not get to see, that we don't know about. Take this beautiful sanctuary that is clean, right? It's clean. I don't know how many of you guys clean on a regular basis, the church on a regular basis. I know some of you do. But today, someone came in around 8:15 in the morning and started cleaning. And I heard the vacuum go off, and they were cleaning for over an hour. Did you guys know that happened this morning to allow you to come to a clean space of worship? Did you know that there are people here who are sitting with us who used to travel for over 3 hours using public transportation to get to our church because they wanted to be a part of this truth? And not only on Sundays, but it was during the weekdays as well. I travel far too. And this weekend I was able to stay in Flushing. And man, it was so amazing. We need to move as quickly as possible to New York. That is one of my prayer requests, and I hope you guys can pray for us as well. But seriously, it was so great this weekend to not have to drive for a long time. But there are people here who drive for hours to get here. Did you guys know this? This is a side note, but I honestly think all people problems can be solved if God would just swap people's lives for a day. I don't even think, maybe not even a full day. I think a couple hours is all we need in someone else's shoes to really understand that person and to let all misjudgments and things that we thought wrong about that person completely disappear. Because all it takes is a couple hours in another person's shoes to understand why they act the way they do. The things that you did not, the parts where you were like, why do they do that? Like where you were just stumped, not understanding, will become so clear to you. If you could just act the way that they do, right? And see why they're doing it. If you can get into their past, in their brains, in the reasonings that they have, it would help you, right? Beloved, don't trust your own knowledge because it limits you. It only lets you see so far, and you miss the beauty and the real knowledge that you could be learning about one another. Instead, trust in God's knowledge. God is omniscient. He knows everything. He knows every single thing about every single one of us here. That could be scary or that could be reassuring, but He knows everything, right? You know what I said before? Like, if only we could be in one another's shoes. Actually, you can. You actually can. Because there is God who is omniscient, who can show you what that person is going through. All it takes is for you to calm down, get rid of your anger, get rid of your blindness for that person, and go to God and say, God, let me see why that person acts the way they do towards me. God, will you let me see and understand why that person did that action towards me right now? I have no idea why they did it, but you are omniscient. You can show me, and that's all it takes. My wish for all of us can actually occur if we just so will it to be. Okay, so now we know the things we shouldn't trust in. And we know that instead, we should trust in God's eyes, in God's, knowledge, right? And what was the second one? I'm blanking all of a sudden. We can check if you're paying attention. Let me go back in my notes. What was it? I don't think it's okay. You guys, you can hear it in the recording. But that second part as well, right? We trust in God's eyes and His knowledge for us. But how can we actually do this, right? Not only learning, okay, don't trust in ourselves, and our feelings and our emotions. But how can we actually let it happen? Well, Thomas needed to see to believe. And going back to our main passage, he had to see, he had to feel with his hands to believe that Jesus was alive. But there's this fact there in the very first verse that we read, in verse 24, that shows us a little bit something different as well. It says in verse 24 that Thomas was not there the first time that Jesus came to them. And he only gets to see and believe the second time around as well because he is with the other disciples the second time. So I'm telling you this, if you desire to believe, if you desire to be able to trust God, the first step is to be in the places that God is in. Sounds very simple, but it's something that we struggle to do, actually. That starts with church. Come out to service. You guys are all here on Sunday, so, you can check the first one that you did, right? Come out. We have so many weekday services throughout the week where you can come out and just spend time with God. If language is an issue for you, right? Just come at the end when we start praying, right? Because there's no language barrier in prayer, right? You can kind of gauge, right? If we start service at like 9 p.m. at night, come around 10 p.m. because that's when the sermon ends. And then you can come and pray, right? Come, spend time with God. You know, if you long to hear sermons in English, come to me and I will tell you people that you can look up on YouTube, pastors that are good to listen to, and you can listen to their sermons at home. And you know, if coming to church physically is an issue for you, I totally understand that. I have to go through the same thing because I'm so far away and I'm at school, you know, majority of the school year. So I totally understand that. If that's the issue, listen to it at home, right? Take that time to spend time with God. Take that time to pray. Take that time to read. There are Pastor Byun's books that have been translated into English. There are at least more than 5 there, right? And many of them have been translated by people who are sitting here. So if you so desire, you can read them and then critique the style of translation of the people, of your peers, and you can let them know, right? But the point is to immerse yourself with God. I understand if you can't come out to church, and I am not judging you, and neither is God. But do know that there is power, and God's presence is where 2 or 3 or more people gather to worship in his name. I can't lie to you. This is a truth, right? I wish I could say that there is equal power in your prayers at home alone, but that would be a lie. Because it says it in the Bible. When 2 or 3 more gather in my name to worship, I will be there. And that is why God is present and God visits the other disciples who are gathered together, right? And not Thomas individually. He doesn't go to Thomas the second time individually either. He's there because everyone is gathered, and Thomas happens to also be there. And if you're wondering how you can have stronger faith, if you're wondering how you can grow closer to God, and if you are wondering how to do all of this, how to trust God, and you are not coming out to church, there is your answer. I'm sorry, but there is your answer. Because it's giving God more opportunities to pour out to you, to show you how trustworthy he is. You know, it's not to bind you. It's not to suffocate you. It's not to give you one more thing to do. But if you are seriously questioning how to grow closer to God, I'm telling you, this is one of the answers. It's a simple way to meet God. And it's a simple way to gain that trust for God. And this is where faith comes in, because it's easier said than done to give your time to God without knowing what the results will be. What if we waste all this time at church, right? All this time here, and then we get a lower paying job because of it, because we've wasted our time where we could be spending time preparing for our career, right? And then God doesn't bless us either for this time that we spend here. Well, first of all, that's never going to happen, right? God always rewards the time we spend with him. But let's just say that's one of our worries, okay? But because this is a legitimate concern that some people have. But what God requires from us in that moment is that little bit more of what we need in this definition of trust. Not only in believing, right? What did I say in the beginning that trust was? Believing in something, that it has strength, that it has power. Not only in that, but that it is faith and a leap into the unknown, right? You can't weigh all the pros and cons that are given to us. There is a TV show called The Good Place, and one of the characters in that TV show cannot decide anything, like cannot make a decision because he's scared of making the wrong decision. And so he weighs out all the pros and all the cons, and it takes forever, and he never comes to a good decision. But what I'm saying is you can't trust God like that because you don't know all of God, right? When you are judging someone else to see if you can trust them, you are judging their actions, you're judging their words, you're judging how they look, you're judging them, right? But when you are trying to trust in God, there is no way that you can judge all of him, right? There is no way that we can see all of him. There is no way that we can feel all of him. So what it takes is a leap of faith, is trusting. we don't know if we can fully trust God. Perhaps you all have yet to learn more of his character. Perhaps you've never witnessed his goodness in your life yet. Yet it's taking that leap and believing that he will do all these things that you ask for. People ask me a lot. They say, Faith, you seem so unfazed by the things that come your way. I mean, sure, at times you look tired and I see your dark circles under your eyes, but you seem to get through your situations in your life. And believe me, I think my life could be a TV series if I wanted it to, if I wrote out the script of my life because of all the crazy things that happen. And I'm sure you guys think the same about your lives. But I guess to onlookers, I seem calm and I seem collected when these crazy things are happening in my life. To tell you the honest truth, I am not. I am as lost as you all are. But I get through it all and I endure it all because I'm not doing it with my own strength. There is no way I could do it with my own strength. When the situation comes, I go, oh Lord, I can't handle this. That's the first thing I say. I have my moment of weakness and I go to God and say, I can't do this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I raise both hands to God in surrender and I tell him, I can't do this, but you can. So Lord, do what you do best. And I trust in God, not because he's already solved it for me or because you've already done everything for me and gotten rid of that situation, but I have faith that you will. I have faith that he will. And I will go on with my day like God has already done it all and won. And beloved, he has. If you still need, like Thomas, to see and to feel with your two eyes, well, let me give you the evidence to believe. Jesus died for us, and God died for us already. We have already won against our iniquities, our faults, our weaknesses, our illnesses. We've won it all already. If you need even more than this great miracle and the miracles that God has done in your life and the love he has poured out in your life, as we take time soon to pray, I want you to ask God to give you tangible evidence or to let him remind you of all that he has done. Because as many problems as I have had in my life, I know that I have had crazy amounts of luck. Things that should have never happened in that way. Things that I did not prepare for, that I did not give my energy towards, that have opened, that have formed, right? I didn't prepare for it, and I would get things. I would get jobs. I would get situations opened. I would get things. People would give me things, too, that I didn't deserve, that I didn't ask for. But these are all not crazy coincidences, but God's hand in my life, right? If I, even with all this, right, all this evidence in front of me, cannot trust God, who can I trust in? But the beauty in Thomas's story is not that the story ends with Jesus rebuking Thomas for his unbelief, but he lets Thomas feel his two hands. And I think that is the beauty of this story. He lets Thomas feel his two hands. He doesn't go to Thomas and say, all of these people believed me and you didn't. You don't get to touch my hands. The first thing he does is he goes to Thomas and says, here, feel. Feel the nail prints in my hands. Feel my side where I was pierced. When we are too weak to even believe, when we don't have the strength to even believe, Jesus comes before us and just hands it all to us and says, here, let me help you believe. Yet, Jesus still says, blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. So, beloved, I urge you to be people who are not followers, but those who lead. I urge you to believe not because you saw, but even when you can't see. And I urge you to look again when a situation looks one way to see that it is actually another. And I urge you all to take off your colored lens when you look at one another, your family, when you look at your friends, when you look at people who are walking with you and not against you. If you are part of the Bible reading group, which it is still not too late to join. You just have to let me know. We are reading Psalms right now, and a couple of days ago we read Psalms 55. And in Psalm 55, it is a gut-wrenching betrayal story that David relays to God. And he talks of how his closest companion said smooth words to him, to his face, to then betray him later. And you can feel the agony of David in that psalm. But, beloved, what if that betrayal was not real? But because of the colored lens in our eyes, because of a sudden emotion that we felt, because of what we thought that person was saying, or what we believed to be what that person was telling us. What if it was all in our mind, right? How I don't know even how to talk of that emotion, right? It would be so detrimental, right? That hate that we had towards that person was nothing but a misunderstanding. If, a hurt that we felt from someone was nothing but goodwill, was actually goodwill for that person. But for David, it was real, right? People were actually trying to kill him. The closest people to him, right? Saul, the king that he served with all of his life, was trying to kill him, right? So for David, it was real. But I want to tell you today, I know I've talked for a while, but I want to tell you, even if it's real, right? Even if you were actually hurt and that person 100% intended to hurt you, I am telling you today to not trust your eyes, to not trust your feelings, and to not trust your knowledge. And what I mean by that is to lay down what you've received and to then fill yourself with God's eyes and his heart and his mind. Because whatever that person did to you, it's like my emotion when I said no to going to the shopping mall, right? It is a fleeting emotion. Nobody hates someone like with their uttermost being. Like, I've yet to meet someone who hates one person for the rest of their life. If that is the case, then there are some serious issues that you need to deal with. But most people don't hate anyone to that level. So if you feel that hate coming from someone, I want to tell you that that emotion, even from that person, is fleeting. So let it go. Because that's not what they truly mean to do to you either. And to go one step further, if you are feeling this betrayal from God, not from someone else, not from your family, your friends, but if you feel this betrayal or this hurt or this anger towards God, I want to tell you right now, well, here's your chance to heal from that feeling. If everything I described to you today is something you feel not between each other but with God, I hope today has finally opened your eyes, because there is no way God would intentionally hurt his creation, right? There's no way a father would intentionally hurt his children. And if you feel personally hurt by God and the situations that you are in, don't trust your eyes, but trust in God's. And I promise you that he will show you a completely different picture of what you have been creating in your mind. Whatever thoughts that you have created, whatever image that you have created of this situation, God will show you differently. And once you are connected with God and his eyes and heart and mind, you will not only see God differently, but yourself through his eyes. And beloved, that is something that I wish every single person here will be able to feel and will be able to see. Not only God through those eyes, because once you have God's eyes, it's easy to trust him, but that you will be able to see yourself through God's eyes. So let's take this time